You guys get bit, I'll give you a name. The other thing I ask, just don't rub his teeth. A lot of people want to touch his teeth. It's not really a good idea. Like this here, he looks at the inside of my wrist instead of seeing people's camera flashes or maybe somebody moving. All these little black dots on the side of his jaws here are taste buds. So when I was touching his jaws over there and he was opening his mouth, that's the reason why. Anything touches around their mouth, they open their jaws until they feel something touch the inside.
Oh.
I need a stick, that's all. I'm running low on fingers here. I don't want to show it looks like Columbus showed here. They can shut their jaws in about 1/3 of a second. This size of a gator has about 3,000 pounds per square inch of closing power in his mouth. The heavier the object that touches them, the harder they shut though. When I touched my finger, it just wasn't hard enough. They can shut their jaws a little bit faster than that. When the alligator shuts his mouth though, what does all the damage is all those holes in the roof of his mouth. That's where his bottom jaw fits into his top jaw. So when he shuts his mouth onto something, that's what breaks all the bones and cuts the skin. This size of a gator has about 3,000 pounds per square inch of closing power. So when he shuts his mouth onto something, it'll just break all the bones. Then they have to use the weight of their food to sit on the back of that tongue there. And it opens up that flap of skin in the back. He'll pull his skin down really low, lift his head backwards. You can see how it makes a little bit of a hole in the back of his throat there. A good way to tell how big an animal is that the alligator can eat is by the top of his head right here. Anything this size right here, that's the size animal that they prefer to eat. The alligators see things 3 times its size, so when they see an animal the size of his head here, it's really the size of his whole head. The alligators only eat things they can fit in their mouth because of that flap of skin in the back of the throat. Crocodiles are the ones that take things underneath the water and let the meat come off the bone, or they let the animal rot a little bit so it's easier for them to pull it apart. If an alligator eats something that's rotting or a little bit decomposed a little bit, the alligators can get sick from it. So they have to eat everything fresh and as soon as they get old. If you notice there's indentations in the middle part of his jaws and the roof of his mouth, that's where his eyes go. When an alligator gets bit on top of the head by another alligator, his eyes drop down the hollow sockets. You can see how he's got them pulled down. They're childproof. Anything gets around his eyes, they pull them down the hollow sockets. That's the reason his taste buds are on the outside of his jaws here. In thick vegetation, these alligators will have their eyes drop down and they use these taste buds here to pick up musky odors or blood or vibrations in the water. That tells the alligator when to open his mouth, and as soon as it touches the inside, they shut their jaws. And like I said, they crush up all the larger bones in it. You can see how sensitive his mouth is. Doesn't take much of anything at all for them to shut their mouth. So if they're chasing something in the water, even though they can't see it, they're sensitive enough to be able to catch it still. They also have ears. Just recently we got a paper saying that alligators can pinpoint distances and directions with their hearing. If they hear a splash inside the water, they did a study with the alligators saying that they'll stop within 10 feet of where the splash originally occurred. I don't believe it's because they have like a sonar with their hearing. I think it's the animal splashing inside the water, leaves a lot of musky odors in the water, and then he tastes it. And that tells him when to stop. I don't believe he's stopping because he sees the splash. He's not going to pinpoint a landmark or something like that. When the Seminole and Miccosukee Indians went out and caught these alligators, a lot of people thought of alligator wrestling when they caught the alligators because of the way they tied them up. They pinned his jaws between their chest and chin, so they had both their hands free to wrap a rope around his jaws. People would see that, they started calling it wrestling the alligator. All they were doing is using their chest and chin as a third hand so they could get that rope around his jaws as tight as possible. I'm going to show you what it looks like. Instead of me tying the alligator, I'm going to pin his jaws and put my hands to the sides for you. The reason I'll tie him up is it rips all of his taste buds off. If he bites me, don't be bashful, take pictures. We'll wait till he's done doing that. See my leg underneath his chest? It's stopping him from shaking really hard. If my leg wasn't underneath there, he'd have a better footing. He'd shake back and forth harder. Alright, so that time there, they'd take a rope, wrap it around his jaws, then they would take the end of his tail and tie that to his jaws. The reason they keep him alive, all these bones on his back here are called scutes. They act like a solar panel. They store heat inside the alligator's body to keep them warm. If you look at these alligators, you see how they got their backs up out of the water? They're trying to build up as much heat inside those bones as possible. While the alligator's sunning himself, if he's up on land, a lot of times you'll see him with their mouth cracked open like this. They're trying to let some of the gases and heat that's building in his stomach out through his mouth. If somebody shoots him, there's 45 minutes to an hour that they're good to eat, then they spoil from the gases getting trapped inside of his body. So catching the alligator alive was about the easiest way to keep the meat fresh. And catching the alligator with their hands is so they wouldn't damage the skin with all the ropes and the hooks that they would throw around. I'm going to show you the same thing I just did there, but with his mouth open. There's no purpose for doing this, folks. I'm just going to do it so you guys get a picture. That's about it. You'll be able to tell if I don't do it right, though. That wouldn't start to get a little strong there. Now, the only reason why we can do that is his top jaw is a little longer than the bottom jaw. If you notice how it's kind of dry looking up there, they build up a callus in the front of their jaws. So he just doesn't have a whole lot of feeling right there. Now, if I held the alligator down like this where he could see everybody, he's just going to move around, just shake around, trying to get away from me. But if I cover his eyes, alligators are just like horses or chickens, birds of prey. You cover up their eyes, you can make them relax. If you watch his breathing, he'll take a couple deep breaths and he'll hold his breath and his whole body will go limp. His eyes swollen up there. Right now he's holding his breath, his nostrils are closed. So it just kind of shuts down here. Now the only thing that doesn't work is if you touch around his taste buds. If you touch around his taste buds, the alligator